Hello, my friends. You might recognize this background. I used to do a lot of videos here. It's a favorite rock of mine. There used to be a little pine tree that was just eking out an existence here on some of the stuff that fell and was creating some soil, but looks like it didn't make it over this last winter. But our family is loving being back in the Northwoods. Oh my goodness. So many joys here, all kinds of old animal friends. The squirrels, the chipmunks. If you saw my, what should I call it? I was going to say delight, but probably blissful, I don't know. If you would see how happy I am when I see a squirrel or a chipmunk, you'd probably think I was a little off my rocker, because I will overreact, I would say, to seeing some of our old friends. There's the deer here that the girls tamed before, and they are trying to retame them. I think some of the deer remember the girls, so we'll see what happens there as far as them becoming part of the family again. Now, some of you have taken our online courses, and the first one was called ReWild Your Mind. And in there I spoke about a concept that I call cultural goo. The idea there is that there are all kinds of offerings in our culture. And I'm speaking largely of media, so movies, games, whatever it might be, but also just of, for instance, our habits of interaction that we use with each other. The distance that we stand from each other, how much we may speak of just the weather as opposed to speaking of deeper subjects than that. All kinds of cultural habits. Now, some of these things, if we look at them consciously, can be very, very beneficial. We can use even media in a positive way to learn about the world. We're using media right now to connect with each other. On the other hand, a lot of media and our cultural paradigms, our cultural habits, in my mind, qualify for that title of cultural goo. Cultural goo is something that comes into our system and gums us up. This might be physically. So for instance, a couch. They lay in the couch, and this is a habit of slouching, and it's the couch itself that kind of creates this environment to enable this habit, and that becomes a goo. It actually goos up my physical system, and it changes the way my body is adapting, so that I'm going to tend to not be as physically fit as I would be if I were, say, sitting on the floor as my usual, or kneeling, squatting especially. Wow, that would be amazing. The couch becomes a cultural goo. Shondell, as I'm sure you'll point out, and I agree completely, we get to choose some of these goos that we want to intake. Not all of us want to live a completely monastic life, ascetic life, where every single choice is going to be made for self-evolution. Some things we might decide we're just going to do because it's comfortable and we enjoy it. Absolutely. I do some of those things myself. Hey, what did you find? Look at that. Wow.
Still not my ring from the yard.
Oh, you're searching for things.
I know.
Wow, those are beautiful. Are you going to use those treasures for something?
Maybe making a necklace for you.
That would be quite a necklace, wouldn't it?
Earrings.
Earrings. What do you think? Should she make a necklace or earrings?
Or what about a bracelet?
A bracelet. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that's bending it, huh?
I think this is the best.
You think the necklace is best?
One right here.
Aw. Thanks, Liliana. But regardless of how much I decide I'm going to intake of this cultural goo, there is a a concept that I've used sometimes, which really helps me to think about it. Am I going to watch Transformers tonight? When I do that, our culture teaches that that's just a largely innocuous choice. I'm going to watch Transformers and not a big deal. If you've explored mindfulness, you will know that as you develop a heightened state of mindfulness and awareness of what happens in your mind, when you intake a movie that's a roller coaster ride, it is like intaking a drug. Perhaps if we are extremely mindfully developed, it will have little or no impact on us. But for most of us who are not Dalai Lamas or Tibetan gurus, Yodas, it will have some amount of impact. And that's where this concept of the half-life of cultural goo comes in really, really useful. And I'm going to share how it works for me, because I think it probably works similarly for you. If you have a high degree of mindfulness, you will probably have felt this in yourself. If you have not developed a lot of mindfulness, then you'll have insight in knowing how these things can affect and impact you. And then you're better able to make conscious decisions about what you're going to intake. I'm guessing that most of you know what a half-life is, but if you don't, the concept is that something decays, essentially. Half of it decays over a set amount of time. So in this case, the cultural goo from any given stimulus has a half-life of a day in most of us. This isn't the same for everybody. Depending on your mental conditioning, that duration of half-life may be longer or shorter for you. But for me, it's about a day. What that means is that tonight, if I choose to watch Transformers, then for about 24 hours after that, the impact of it is actually, at first it's going to grow a little bit. So that night I might have really crazy dreams or trouble sleeping. I might have dreams of the Transformer movie. It's going to be very present. So I used to play Halo. Yep, I used to play Halo. And when I would do that night, I would have dreams of fighting the Covenant. And wow, it would be very, very present in my mind. After about a day, the goo that's created in my mind has reduced by about 50%. A day after that, it's at about 25%. The day after that, that's halved. And it keeps halving down, down, down. Now the thing with half-life is that it's encouraging. It tells us that our minds, our bodies are resilient and they heal from things. They bounce back to whatever our baseline is. The bad news is that cultural goo having a half-life, it never really reduces down to zero. You probably can experience this for yourself if you can recall some peanut butter ditty ad from when you were 8 years old. I know that I used to watch He-Man when I was a little kid, that cartoon. And if I would go on YouTube and watch an episode of He-Man, it would look, even though I can't remember it right now, it would look extremely familiar. I'd recognize the faces and the style of the animation, which tells me that there's still a residue in there of watching He-Man when I was a little kid. So that half-life, those things never quite go away. And our minds are built to retain. They have a very strong retention and ability to hold on to things for our entire lives. But they do reduce. That is the toss-up. The good news, again, is that if I decide to intake something and then I decide it was a bad idea to watch Transformers, I'm going to fairly quickly, over the next few days, feel the impact of that reduce in my life. But it's always going to stay there. When I watch that movie, it's always going to be a part of my consciousness, a part of my makeup. It's where that Forest Monk tenet of every moment being a moment of training comes into effect. and that everything I intake, everything I do, every action, every word I speak, how I choose to sit or hold myself, that's all becoming part of who I am right now and who I will be for the rest of my life. That can feel like a heavy weight, and that's again where that half-life gives us that good news of things reducing their impact. But we can use this half-life concept to really help us in the sense of being a good reminder before I sit on that couch, before I turn on the evening news, before I put in the DVD and watch Transformers, I can think, do I want to intake this and make this a part of who I am for the rest of my life? And if you decide yes and you decide it was a bad idea, you have that consolation prize of knowing that it will reduce its impact over time. This is the cultural goo. This is the cultural goo. This is the cultural goo concept. Why was that a tongue twister for me? This is the cultural goo concept that hopefully you'll find helpful. Share with me what cultural goo you are choosing to take in, and if you can feel the impact it has upon you. Do you agree that it seems to reduce in a half-life sort of way over time? And what are some positive cultural influences that you're taking in right now? Share those things in the comments. Cannot wait to hear what you have to say. And we will talk with you soon. Love to you all.